You've heard of ghost stories, but what about a ghost phone call? Picture this. 1999, a group of students in the UK stumble upon a lone, red payphone deep in the middle of a forest. And get this, it only rings when someone is about to go missing. But the most terrifying part? The phone, it knows their names. Our story takes us to the eerie Waltham Woods in the UK. A few friends from the local Greenholt College, out for a bit of an adventure, find this payphone booth just standing there, completely out of place. It looks old, weathered, almost like it grew there. They think it's just a weird prank or some abandoned relic. They joke about it, take some pictures, and head back. But then a few days later, they're drawn back to the woods, almost against their will. As they approach the clearing, the phone starts to ring. They hesitate, but curiosity wins. One of them picks it up. On the other end, nothing but static. They hang up, a little creeped out. The next day, it happens again. Ring, static. And the day after that, ring, static. Always 3 times, never 4. It became their strange little ritual. But soon the strange ritual turned into a nightmare. They started bringing a tape recorder, determined to figure out what was going on. One evening, the phone rang as usual. They picked it up, hit record, and listened. This time, through the crackling static, they heard something else. A faint, urgent whisper. It was hard to make out, but it sounded like a voice, desperate and pleading. They listened to the recording over and over again, trying to decipher the words. Then, on another night, the call was different. The static was louder, more aggressive, and through it, a single clear word was whispered. A name. It was the name of one of their friends in the group. They all brushed it off as a coincidence, their minds playing tricks on them. But 2 days later, that same student vanished without a trace. Panic set in. This wasn't a prank anymore. They were terrified, but they felt they had to go back. Maybe the phone held answers. The next time it rang, another name was whispered from the receiver. And just like before, that person disappeared a few days later. It happened again and again. The group dwindled, one by one, picked off by this phantom caller. Fear turned into a grim, desperate obsession. They had to know what was happening. They continued to record every single call, their collection of tapes growing into a library of horror. Then came the final recording. The phone rang, and the last remaining member of the original group, the one who had been documenting everything, picked it up. This time the whisper was clearer than ever before. It said, "I'm the last one." Chills ran down his spine. The voice, it was his own, but that's impossible. He was standing right there, holding the phone. He had never spoken into it. He hadn't even been in the forest when the other calls were made. He was the group's historian, always waiting safely back in town. He dropped the phone and ran from the woods, never looking back. Weeks went by. The police investigated the disappearances but found nothing. The payphone booth itself was eventually removed by the authorities, leaving just an empty patch of dirt in the clearing. But the story doesn't end there. Months later, hikers passing through Waltham Woods reported hearing a strange sound, a faint but unmistakable ringing, echoing through the trees from the very spot where the booth used to be. The ghost phone was still calling. So let me ask you, if you were walking through those woods and heard that phantom ring, would you answer it? Let me know your answer in the comments below. Have you ever heard a radio transmission that shouldn't exist? A voice from a place that's long gone? In the vast, silent expanse of the Gobi Desert, a story circulates among the few who patrol its borders, a tale that defies all logic. It's about a Mongolian guard post, a lonely outpost that burned to the ground in a fire back in 1974. Officially, it's nothing but a ruin. But some people say it's still broadcasting. Our story centers on Batsai Khan Inc., a 52-year-old radio operator who has spent his life listening to the whispers of the desert. For years, he'd picked up strange, fragmented signals coming from a dead zone on the border. At first, he dismissed it as atmospheric interference, the kind of phantom noise common in such a remote area. But the signals were persistent, and one day he managed to clean up the audio just enough to make out words. The voice was conducting a roll call, reading out a list of names. Batsai Khan ran the names through the military archives. His blood ran cold. Every single soldier on that list had died in the 1974 fire. Night after night, Batsai Khan became obsessed, tuning into the phantom station. He would sit in his Khan's room for hours, headphones pressed tight against his ears, meticulously documenting every crackle and pop. He started recognizing patterns in the static moments where the ghostly transmissions became clearer. The voices spoke in an old Mongolian military dialect, using radio codes and call signs that were discontinued decades ago, right after the fire. It was like listening to a recording from half a century past, but it wasn't a recording. The messages were different every night. Sometimes behind the voices he could hear other sounds, the crunch of boots on gravel, the faint metallic scrape of a rifle being shouldered. It sounded like a fully operational guard post. He felt like he was eavesdropping on ghosts. A spectral platoon still standing guard in the ruins. One night, the transmission was different. The usual calm, procedural tone was gone. After a long stretch of silence, a voice, crystal clear and trembling with fear, broke through the static. It said, "We are not alone out here." The message was followed by the sound of frantic, heavy breathing, and then, abruptly, silence. But before the signal died, a string of coordinates was broadcast, a location Batsai Khan knew all too well. It was the exact site of the burned-out guard post. He immediately reported the incident. An investigative team was dispatched to the remote coordinates, expecting to find nothing more than cold ashes and forgotten history. When the team arrived at the ruins, the desert air should have been frigid. Instead, the atmosphere inside the skeletal remains of the communications room was strangely warm, thick with a residual heat, as if a full bank of high-powered radio equipment had been running just minutes before they got there. They found no equipment, of course, just charred debris and dust. But as their own radio operator tried to contact headquarters, he heard it. Faintly, underneath his own signal, was another sound. The unmistakable rhythmic whisper of breathing, coming from a station that wasn't there. What do you think was out there with that spectral platoon? Let me know in the comments if you want to hear more legends from abandoned military bases. Have you ever heard of the snowstorm cabin? Deep in the Finnish wilderness, hikers have been telling a chilling story for decades. They speak of a small wooden cabin that appears out of nowhere, but only when a blizzard is raging. You'd think it was just a hallucination brought on by the cold, except for one impossible detail. Every single person who claims to have seen it describes the exact same interior. The stories center around the forests near Rovaniemi, in the heart of Lapland. Imagine being lost, the wind howling, snow blinding you, and then through the white chaos, you see it a single light, a promise of shelter. One of the most detailed accounts comes from a young hiker named Tulanimi. She was 26 when she went missing for 2 days during a sudden, violent storm. When she was found, she was disoriented but unharmed, and she told a story that sent shivers down the rescuers' spines. She said she found the cabin, and like everyone else, she mentioned one specific, disturbing detail: a wooden rocking chair in the corner, moving slowly back and forth on its own. Tula said she was desperate, on the verge of freezing, when she stumbled upon the cabin. The door was unlocked. The moment she stepped inside, the wind stopped. It was eerily quiet and surprisingly warm. A single lantern hanging from the ceiling cast a soft, golden glow. But when she looked closer, there was no oil, no candle, nothing to explain the light. The air was still and dry. Then she saw the walls. Someone had carved tally marks into the wood, from floor to ceiling, on every single wall. There were hundreds, maybe thousands of them. Each group of 5 crossed through with a desperate slash. The rocking chair continued its steady, silent rhythm in the corner. She said she stayed for what felt like hours, too scared to sleep, just watching the chair rock and the strange, sourceless light flicker. The warmth was comforting, but the silence and the tally marks felt like a warning. Eventually, the storm outside seemed to quiet down, and she knew she had to leave. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was not alone, that staying any longer would be a fatal mistake. As she opened the door and stepped back out into the snow, she took one last look back. That's when she saw it. Fresh footprints were appearing in the snow behind her, one by one, as if an invisible person had just walked out of the cabin and was now heading back inside, leading from where she stood, straight to the now closed door. Terrified, Tula ran. She didn't stop until she collapsed from exhaustion, which is where the search party eventually found her. They followed her tracks back, trying to locate the cabin she described. They searched the entire area she indicated, but there was nothing. No cabin, no structure, not even the remnants of an old foundation. Her footprints simply stopped in the middle of a clearing. The only strange thing they found was a small circular patch of snow that was inexplicably warm to the touch, as if a fire had just been put out, melting the ground beneath it. To this day, no one has been able to explain what Tula and so many others saw. Was it a shared delusion, a trick of the mind in extreme conditions? Or is there really a cabin out there, waiting in the snowstorms for the next lost traveler? If you were freezing, lost in a blizzard, and you saw that light, would you have stepped inside? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more strange stories.